to, to know how to utilize the online learning platform so they know what their homeworks are, and to really help them to have a smooth transition between primary and secondary. So the school is bilingual. We teach German and English, and native German level students will also learn Spanish. As far as Cambridge International is concerned, the curriculum, the core subjects, they're fairly similar to the UK. But I think within the humanities, the focus is more European than UK-based history and geography.
And so, what is the IB curriculum? What is it, the qualification? Because some people have never studied internationally, so they won't understand it at all. Can you just explain that for us, please?
Yes, so the IB diploma is essentially the equivalent of the AS, the AS and the A2 level qualification that students get before they go to university. And the reason that IB is becoming so popular in lots of international schools around the world, particularly in Germany, because initially we started with the AS levels and the A2 levels with the Cambridge International curriculum. And what we were finding was that because people in Germany haven't studied AS and A levels themselves, they actually wanted their children to have a similar education to themselves. And in Germany, the pre university qualification that children get in the normal public schools um, is called the Abitur. And the Abitur, the structure of the Abitur is very similar to the IB diploma program, where you do a range of subjects, not just 3 or 4 subjects, which are very intense, and almost the first year of university style knowledge that you have to have when you do your AS and A levels. So the IB diploma is made up of 6 subjects, and your subject comes from all of these different subject areas. So you have language A, which is a language that you should be most proficient in. Language B is an additional language that is a foreign language, but also very high proficiency within that, especially when you're studying in Germany. In so the German Education Ministry has an agreement with the IB organization, and there's certain requirements that the children have to meet in order to go to university in Germany. So, although through the international offices in the universities here, AS and A levels are accepted, but as the IB organization has an agreement with the Kultusministerium, which is the education ministry in Germany, it's much easier for the students to get into university. And it's also a very similar structure to the German Abitur. And so what we found was that with the German families that we have at school, it was a much better qualification for them, and also much more. Um, there was a lot more trust within this qualification, and also it was a bit more well known than the international A levels, and so that was really a great change. The IB organization has there's so much research, evidence-based research in teaching and learning, so many different strategies, and within all the training that the staff get, you go to workshops where these things are taught to you and you can really implement them in your teaching.
And it was interesting because, I mean, a few years ago, I think this was when the general elections in the UK were taking place, they were talking about how university in Germany was offering free tuition. There were no tuition fees, that students were able to go to university for free. And
Mhm.
is that correct?
Yeah, there's minimal tuition fees. I mean, you do pay a small amount per semester, like for administration and things like that. But yeah, there are no tuition fees, which is also why the students, although coming from different international settings, want to live and study in Germany because of the tuition fees. And why not? The education standard is also very good in the universities, and it's great to see that it's available and so readily available for every student to go to university. One thing I did find that was very different in Germany was that there are different types of secondary schools. So if at the end of grade 4 teachers feel that your child isn't ready or doesn't have the or if the secondary education like a grammar school is not really well suited to that child, they will recommend a different type of school. And there are 3 or 4 different types of secondary schools here, and students can go down one of those paths depending on what their teacher recommends. It's only a recommendation. Previously, the recommendation was something that you really had to take, but now there is more. The parents can make more of that decision and allow the students to try going to the grammar school. And some of the other schools are kind of vocational based, training based. But saying that, if a child wants to do something at university through these routes and the various different supportive routes that are offered to the children, they can still get to where they need to get to.
And it's interesting because we've just had Nitin Singh just messaging saying that it's a very big problem because tuition fees over school are 75%. I think, is that in Germany, Nitin? Can you just message in to let us know? Because we're talking about Germany today. And we've also had Freya, who's a host on our show, who's just said that she loves the IB. And Freya has been working internationally in Italy. And I absolutely love her Twitter handle. So if people are on Twitter, do check out Freya because her Twitter handle is awesome. Um, in terms of team culture, presumably there are lots of people from around the world working together. How do you manage that amount of diversity, and how do you create a team that can accelerate and really produce results?
We do have a wonderful team of teachers from all over the world, and it's lovely to see them teach in the various different ways that they've been taught, and to bring all of those things together in the school. So we have some really lovely innovations that they come up with. There's been This year we had a really amazing. It was called One School, One Book project, where all the teachers read chapters from a book and children had to guess who the reader was. And it really got the whole school so engrossed in this book. And it was great. And we had little quizzes, and the English department within primary had put vocabulary around the school where the children had to go and write the vocabulary down. And it was a whole very structured but really interesting event for the students, and they were so eager for the next chapter to be online, and they were listening in to who was reading and guessing, and there was lots of pictures of all the different readers, and you had to guess between who they were.
And
We
that's interesting that you chose one book and then you chose chapters from the whole book so that it was done in order. I mean, I think that's a brilliant idea. I've never heard of that in schools.
Yeah, it
I
was.
haven't seen that yet.
I think the One Book, One School project is something that's available online for people to have a look at, and there are some recommendations
Hmm.
which book that they should read. And this book was really, it was great. In fact, it was a series of 3 books, and we only read the first one. And children went out and bought those 2 other books, and they were really happy with the series. And it got children reading, and it got children interested in books. And I think so many different cultures and so many different nationalities coming together, and there's so much to be celebrated. And I think that's something that really helps our culture to thrive in the school and brings so many new ideas to the students. Um, Usually we have so the primary school is 2 form entry up until grade 4. Grade 4 is a single class, but we will have 2 grade 4s next year. And so 2 teachers normally work quite closely together, 2 or 3. So one being the main English teacher, one being the main German teacher. And there's a lot of collaborative planning that has to be done, because it's so, I think you get such a good learning experience if all the teachers who are working alongside each other within that class can see where the cross curricular links may be. There was an example of this. I was teaching grade 2 science, and I had a lot of ESL learners in my class. And when I was talking about materials, and we were talking about describing those materials, or when we were talking about our senses and describing what we could feel and smell and taste, there's lots of words, English words, that are quite difficult to understand if you're not able to actually taste that type of taste. So we actually realized that when I was talking to the English teacher, that they were doing adjectives during English. So we actually collaborated, and the German teacher also was doing adjectives at the same time. So they actually used the words that we were using in science to really get a better understanding and a deeper kind of connection to these words that I was using in science, to really help the students to understand what we were saying. And I think that was really important because not only were they getting the experience of hands-on experiments and touching things and feeling and understanding what those words actually meant, but they were also being taught them in their language. And I think this working together and the collaborative planning, it really helps to celebrate the diversity in our team because the teachers work so closely with those students as well. And the students can see that there is, there's a teacher from Greece and I'm from Greece, and they have this connection and they talk about Greece. And you've got other teachers who are from South America, and you have families from South America. And we have an international day every year. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we weren't able to have one this year, but I hope we get them back very soon. And on International Day, everyone signs up. Those people who want to have a table to celebrate their culture and their nationality, and they bring food that is native to their country and ornaments. And it's a lovely day when we can try each other's food, and you get to taste food from different parts of the world and see ornaments that maybe you've not seen before. We normally take, as a family, some Pakistani snacks. And last year we made scones and clotted cream. And my husband had to actually make the clotted cream from scratch because you can't buy it here. And we had a good supply of British tea. So it was a lovely day. And I hope that we resume them very soon.
So that brings us nicely on to speaking different languages. So when you're working internationally, do you have to speak and teach in the language of the country? So you're in Germany. Can you speak German? And are you able to speak any other languages? How does that work?
My German is actually quite basic. I have learnt to read ingredients and make conversation, and I'm able to pay and return things at the shops and things like that. But the main working language at the school is English. But there are some members of staff who only speak German. And I always tell the caretaker that he's been my best teacher of German because he's always been so patient with me trying to articulate myself. And I used to say to him, right, well, you're going to have to wait until I really find the words that I need to describe this problem to you. But it's been, I mean, it's good. I think that's been good for me. Because usually I used to start with in German, I used to ask people if they spoke English. And usually people do speak fairly good English here. And particularly if you make an effort in German, I found that they were more inclined to help me out in English. Um, but I think definitely if you're not exposed to it, you don't really until I started working, and I had to, because there was a lot that I had to do with the caretaker when I was needing things, and I had to try to speak in German. So it's been good. And the children do laugh at times when I'm covering a German lesson, and I tell them that they need to teach me rather than the other way around, and they find it quite funny, and they enjoy it. So, but it's great. I mean, my children are at the school as well, and I think it's been an amazing opportunity for them to learn German and to be such good German speakers and to really have access to that language. And not only that, German native level students also learn Spanish. And it's the immersion system within school. So if there is one teacher who teaches German, she will always speak in German. She'll even do her lunch duty in German, and the whole of lunchtime will be everything will be in German, assembly will be in German. And depending on which teacher is doing assembly, the assembly might even be in Spanish that day or in English. So it's one teacher, one language, and that's maintained throughout school. And so they really do have this. And children don't even realize that they're learning different languages. Children in the kindergarten, they call the language by the name of the teacher who teaches them that language, and they don't even know that they're speaking different language. And they so smoothly they go from one language to another just because they know that Mrs. Khan only speaks in English, and they will talk to me only in English. And it's lovely. It's great to see that, and I've seen that with my children, and I'm so pleased that they've had this opportunity to learn different languages.
And so, kindergarten, can you just clarify, is that the equivalent to our EFES, early years?
That's right. It is early years. It includes um, our equivalent of reception, and here called preschool. And it's actually the key stage that we cover whenever we talk about stages within Cambridge International. Cambridge International is one stage ahead of us. Cambridge International is based on the UK year system, and we are just 1 year behind when we talk about our grades.
Okay, Marby, I think we've got a caller. I'm just gonna just double check if that she's able to hear us. Can you hear us? Okay, no. Okay, right. So carrying on then, I've got loads of friends who have moved over into international education, and they're always telling me that I should do it because they say that the behaviour's better than in the UK. What has your experience been like in Germany? Is behaviour better than the UK? And why do you think it is, if so? And if it isn't, again, can you explain?
Um, I think it depends on the school setting. So definitely, every school has a different culture and a different setting. At our school, definitely behaviour is good. We've got very clear expectations of the students and a clear policy on rewards and punishments. There are very clear policies on bullying, and the teachers have high expectations of behaviour. And I think when students know what the boundaries are, and they can see that when those boundaries are overstepped, there are consequences, then generally behaviour is good. And I think one of the main reasons that this is something that is implemented and is maintained is also because the school's got very good communication channels with the parents, and parents are informed if there are any inappropriate behaviors. I mean, if I see anything, I write it in their communication book. And then coming from me, I always say to them, I want to see that signed, please, tomorrow. And they'll come back and they'll say, yeah, miss, I showed my mum and dad and it's signed for you. And you can see then there's that recognition that that's something that I have to improve on. And I think that's really helped us, and it works.
And in terms of leadership, what do you think it takes to become a successful international school leader?
I think in terms of being any leader, I think you have to have ethical values. Um, you have to have respect for the people you work for, but I think they also have to have respect for you, and they've got to see that you are supportive of them. They have to see that you are working hard. And I think leaders do work hard and they are held accountable. And I think this is something that you are held accountable for the work that you oversee. So, the departments that you're overseeing, it's your responsibility to make sure that all of the requirements and all of the goals and standards are met within those departments. And I think having a good relationship where your staff know you, I mean, I think it's important that you have a relationship and they have some insight into what kind of person you are as well. And the trust is also very important. So, very similarly, when you have a class, and it's really important to have good relationships with your students, it's very similar with working with staff in a team, that trust and good relationships with staff are a good foundation when you are leading the team. And I think as a leader, you've really got to look out for members of the team, making sure that they're okay, especially when you can see that something's wrong. And times when you have you can see when people really need something, and just stepping in and saying, right, I'm going to do this, I think you should do what you need to do if you need to leave, or making sure that you're okay. And I think that's a lot of responsibility that comes with leadership, that when things go well, it's important to praise the team, but when things go wrong, it's up to the leaders to take responsibility and find solutions to those problems.
And that's a great way of looking at it, because sometimes what happens is that obviously it's the same in any industry. There are people who avoid accountability and there are people who bury their heads in the sand. And I think it's really important as a leader to show your team support, because if you're
Hmm.
not showing them that support, how can we possibly expect our teachers to actually be successful in the classroom? It could be anything
Definitely.
with regards
Yeah,
to
definitely.
behavior, with regards to teaching and learning. It takes a teams are important in schools, and I think sometimes people forget that.
Definitely.
So in terms of international recruitment, what do you kind of look for when you're recruiting people, and how do you carry out your recruitment? Is there anything specific that you're looking for if people did want to move over to other countries?
I think one of the main things is when we have a vacancy, we know what we're looking for. We need to make sure that that person is qualified within the subject that they're teaching. A lot of the teachers we're employing at the moment, because of the IB being fairly new to the school, that's been something that has been a lot of our new hires have all been IB teachers. And you see that there's IB really brings with it so much potential. There's so much research within within the work that they do, and they really have a lot of very well structured, even the workshops. I mean, the way that they're structured, and they teach the teachers to have IB ethos, and to really have that understanding of what IB is. I think that's been really important, and often when we're recruiting, that's something that we are looking for at the moment because of the change to the DP. And we also work with some international recruitment agencies. We often notify the agency of which vacancies we have. We advertise on our school website and on LinkedIn. Um, and I mean, there's lots of differences in the lifestyle here. So I would say that, coming to Germany, um, we thought of it as a bit of an adventure, actually. And because my husband got the job here, I was very happy in Edinburgh. And he got the job, and I said, okay, let's do it for a year. So he promised me that it would only be for a year. In fact, when my landlord was showing us around the flat that we live in, um, my husband asked him, "How long would you like us to live here for?" And he said, "Well, you've got it for as long as you want it." And I said, "Oh, don't worry, there's no need for that. We're only here for a year." And that one year has now become nearly 9 years, and we're very happy here. But there was a lot of change. There was a lot of things to get used to. Shops aren't open here on a Sunday, so it took me a couple of weeks to get used to that and get into the swing of things. I always ran out of milk by Sunday morning. And I had amazing neighbors, actually. I think it's also about the kind of support network that you have in the community around you. And they were always very supportive, and I've made some very good friends here, so it's been nice. There's lots of rules as well in Germany for the benefit of the environment. Strict rules related to noise, recycling. Is very family oriented. And one thing that I found really lovely was the contrast. When I was in Edinburgh, obviously the weather was slightly different too, and the kind of safety of outdoor spaces for children and playgrounds, they weren't that safe and secure in Edinburgh, and not very well maintained in some areas where we used to go. But here, there's a real focus on the spaces, the kind of joint areas where people can go and play. There's sand pits and a really lovely playground in every neighborhood, so all the children can get together and parents can take their children to play. So that's been really lovely to see.
And so Noreen's messaged in and said, how important is the culture of the country you're working in? How do you go about learning or understanding the culture, as that may play a part in how schools are led?
Yeah, I think it is very important. I think as an international school, I think the culture is quite unique because it's not just the culture of the country you're in. It's also like a culmination of all the cultures of the people that are at the school, and this kind of celebrating the diversity through International Day and through other events, and people bring those events to life. We just had celebration of International Pink Day because one of our teachers loves wearing pink, and she made sure that all of us were in pink. So it's like, that's the culture of helping each other grow and being supportive of one another and celebrating the things that we like. So she loves pink, and we were so happy to support her in it because she always has this thing about pink. And
So
so I
it's just
think
a
it is.
case of looking after each other. When you're a team, you're just
Exactly.
literally supporting each other, whatever your ideas might be. It's just,
Exactly.
and in terms of like Germany itself, were there any other major differences that you found, hard to settle in with, in terms of, you know, the area that you're staying in, and the children, and possibly even the people that, outside of school that you mix with?
Yeah, there were big differences. I mean, we did actually start off in the local school with my eldest son, and for different reasons, it didn't work very well because I think that it starts very slowly. I mean, in the UK, children are reading by the time they're at nursery. They're starting to read, and in Germany, there's a real focus on play before you go to school. And it's only in Vorschule, which is kind of like a preschool time just before children leave kindergarten to go to school, that they start really even learning the shapes and colors and numbers and
So
things.
how long is that playtime? Like, what's the age range? When did they actually start learning? What's the
Quite late, actually. So when they leave kindergarten, they're 5 or 6,
mm.
and so they don't actually start learning to read and write until they start school. And for that reason, I think my son found it quite difficult because I was um, I was a teacher, and I used to do things with him that encouraged him to be reading. And so he actually started reading before we moved to Germany. And so when he was at kindergarten, he was pretty bored. So I used to pick him up a little bit earlier. We'd come home and we'd do some projects at home, and we'd do things that he enjoyed. He loved learning about science, and we'd do some experiments and things. And so when he went to school, he was really bored. And I think that really impacted on a lot of things, not only if a child is not um, being intellectually challenged or even stimulated, then obviously they're going to look to do other things and not be very interested in what they're doing. So they started with the alphabet then in that class, and he was already reading in English. So for him that was difficult, and I think then I took him to a different school. Then we found a bilingual school that was also a private school, and although when we were in England, my husband and I had always wanted our children to go to public schools like we had done, and private education really wasn't on the cards for us. But coming here and seeing the difference in the education system, and seeing that it would have been very difficult for him to study completely in German, although his German was good, but I think it was just the fact that it was everything would have been in German, and even the amount of English that they were learning was so basic, and he was so much, so far ahead of that. So I think it was a good change from the local public school to, first of all, a bilingual school in the area. Although that was also a very young school, and there were I think they didn't really have many policies in place because they were so young. And then just me getting the job at the school that we're at now, um, I really saw how amazing and how much potential was being, the potential of the children was being fulfilled because of the environment that was giving. The school had such a lovely vibe to it. You could see that the children were happy. There was an assembly every morning. It was so much what school should be. It was so fun and energetic, and that I think really drew me towards the school. And it was during that time actually when I first started working there. So my younger son started at kindergarten there, and I used to stay for assembly. And in assembly was when the school was starting to teach the 7 habits with the leader in me. One of the main things is one of the habits. The second habit is begin with the end in mind. So, really understanding goal setting from a very young age to know what you want to do. And the teachers actually gave a demonstration, and there was a glass jar and different sized rocks. And they all indicated something. So, the big rocks were really important things like spending time with your family and doing your homework and practicing your piano because you've got a piano exam. And then, as the rocks got smaller, the importance of the task became less important. And so much so that you had large rocks, then you had medium sized rocks, small rocks, and then sand or gravel. And that was like really time wasting activities. And what the teacher showed the children, it was a very visual experiment, and it was a very good one. I still remember it because it was so good. Was that if you put your big rocks into the vase first, you have enough room for the small rocks and then the even smaller ones, and then the sand fills the spaces between the rocks. But if you don't prioritize and put first things first, then you won't be able to manage all the things you need to do. And maybe your big rocks will get left and they won't fit into your day. So that was something that I thought was a really good way of teaching children how to goal set. And I think within now, with the school culture and how things have changed and progressed towards IB really is giving the students the skills to better their learning, that metacognition, knowing what works well for me as a learner, what skills and tools I should be using. And that all fits in really well with the leader in me because you're giving them the tools from kindergarten to the end of grade 10 of how to goal set and how to prioritize and how to be, everyone can be a leader. You just have to know what you want, and you don't have to be you don't have to have a certain criteria to be a leader, but you have to have these qualities. And it's kind of developing those soft skills within the students. And then the transition to IB and implementing the IB learner profile, you can actually see so many similarities. And one of the major changes that I had to lead when I first started at the school was the implementation of the diploma program. And because previously it was International Cambridge with the AS and A2 levels, and the change was required because most German families who were at the school wanted a very similar qualification to the German qualification. So our class sizes were dwindling as we got towards the upper years, and with the change towards IB, we've got much healthier class sizes, and I think that was something that was really important. But I think the school actually encourages those changes and the kind of the implementation of the IB in 11 and 12. It's not just suddenly a different approach. It's a gradual approach that they're learning already. There's just different titles and different names that they give to those characteristics.
And so, you've talked about how you've led change and stuff. What about governance? Do you get much support from that? Like, how does that work in the school?
Within our school, we have an equivalent of a school governing body, which is the Parents Association of the school. So each class has an elected parent representative, and then these reps attend regular meetings with the principal, and issues which need discussion are then discussed in the meetings, and then the senior leadership team reviews those issues and we find solutions.
And so, do they take an active engagement in the school? Like, are they within lessons? Do they come into the school, have a look around? Do they do
Um,
things like that?
They don't really come into lessons, but yes, if they wanted to have, they do come into the school quite regularly. The meetings are held in school, so they see what's going on around them. And they do take a very active role. And anything that changes, if there's a major change happening, we obviously talk to them first. And so they are kind of, they're our, the Parents Association is, they work very closely with the school. And I think with those communication channels, having very clear communication and any change is implemented in a really structured way, I think it really helps. It helps the culture of the school and it helps to keep this trust between the Parents Association and the school.
And so, in terms of qualifications, what kind of qualifications do you need to be able to teach abroad?
Um, any teacher who is a teacher in their home country, if they came to work with us, the qualifications and their certificates are sent off to the local education authority of the state that you're in, so the state that the school is in. They review and check that the qualifications um, are matched or are equivalent to the type of qualification that you require in Germany to be a teacher. And also, all of our new teachers are observed by the local education authority at the beginning of the school year.
And so, do you feel that you would ever come back to teach in the UK? Why or why not?
Yes, if we move back, then certainly. I think teaching is something that I love to do, and I would love to keep doing it for as long as I can. So I think yes, if we came back, but at the moment, I think it just depends on my husband's job and my job, and but our family is back in the UK, so it is. I mean, this year has really been difficult because we haven't been able to come back, and we're really looking forward to hopefully things get better, and with the vaccinations in place and different travel restrictions, it has been difficult, and we're hoping to get over to see the family. But yeah, if we did have to move back to the UK for any reason, for jobs or for family reasons, then yeah, I would definitely want to teach back in the UK.
Brilliant. And in terms of teaching and learning, let's just head over to that. Are you using research based evidence for teaching and learning? How are you now delivering your curriculums in Germany?
I think a lot of the research-based evidence that we do use now is IB based because of the change that we've had from Cambridge International to IB. And I think one of the main things when this change actually occurred was that making sure that everybody was on board. So obviously we had to make sure that the parents association were aware, that then the teachers were aware, and all the stakeholders in the school had awareness and they were able to ask questions. And then there were parents evenings and student evenings where they really understood um, what was going to happen and the type of curriculum that they were going to be taught. And a lot of this also, the teaching and learning, there are I don't know if some of you may be aware that IB approaches to teaching and learning. There's a lot of evidence and a lot of research, and this is really, and I think when you do have evidence-based research, research-based evidence for teaching and learning, then the teachers and the students have this. The teachers have somewhere to refer to, and the teachers have really solid evidence for the types of methods that they're using in their teaching. And then when they've been on training programs for the IB, they've really understood those better. And we've run collaborative planning meetings within. We have an we have a collaborative planning meeting for IB specifically every week, and they're constantly reviewing those and teaching those, and helping the teachers to really utilize those tools that are available to them. And every teacher, when we are as an IB school, we have access to the My IB website, and there's a program resource center, and there's so much there for them to utilize. And we're very lucky. A few of the new hires that we had this year, the IB teachers, and also a non-IB teacher, have such a good grasp of innovation within technology, of education, with the approaches to teaching and learning. And they've run workshops for the staff. And also, sorry, I was just going to add
Carry
to
on.
that. Every Wednesday we have a staff meeting, and this year we trialed a new setup for the staff meetings with an agenda, and every department had to give a presentation so every month there was one department who would speak to the entire staff body, and give a presentation of techniques that work well for them, and give research-based evidence for teaching and learning, and really help others to grow and progress in their teaching.
And in terms of the innovative strategies with the use of technology, what kind of things have you started delivering in your schools? And what was it like before COVID and after COVID?
So we do have some smart boards, and we do have the use of technology within classes. We have a projector in every classroom, and teachers plug in their laptops, and you can show different ranges of media, and that's something that does really enhance our lessons. And I think pre-COVID, um, that technology was there, and people did use it. Some people didn't use it, but then I think because of the pandemic, we were really lucky to have such innovative teachers, and we had a very successful period of remote teaching during the pandemic. We had so many emails and messages from parents who were so happy with the teaching that their children were receiving. And as a parent myself, I could see it. You were able to carry on working because your children were being taught. And that was really important, I think, for our parents and for the school community, and to keep the children engaged in their learning. And compared to other schools in the area where teachers were calling their students to set work or emailing the week's work to the students, not seeing them online daily, regularly. I think that was something that people really struggled with during the pandemic. And we were online 2 days after closure with a timetable for children to log into virtual classrooms with their teachers and their classes. And I think this was great. I think the students did amazingly. They all became so technology savvy by the time they came back to school, and it helped with the teaching as well. The teachers found new ideas, and we have an online learning portal where teachers put all of the work for the week, and it's where students and parents can see assessment grades. And on this, teachers started posting online teaching recommendations, and we actually had a workshop on uh, virtual teaching and distance learning, and we were looking at tools that worked well for different people. I attended a few webinars as well, and other people also did this, and we all posted the things that we found useful. And within departmental meetings, so within the sciences, I found a lot of tools that I was using within science. Some of my colleagues also found some virtual um, labs that you could do online, and simulations, and they were great. And it was really amazing the support that the teachers gave each other. And I think, it was very it was very characteristic of us as a school to be innovative and to do what needed to be done in order to make sure that the children's learning was at the forefront and was something that we prioritized.
And you mentioned through that about professional development. So, in terms of just generally and during COVID, what kind of professional development opportunities were available for career focused teachers, those who do want to improve their practice and go that step further?
I think there are lots. Cambridge International also, they have a lot of collaborative workshops where people can join webinars and teachers can really talk about what works best for them. It was amazing to see how much people invested in this kind of. I mean, there was so many webinars that I attended also that were really helpful in terms of just distance learning and technology within the classroom and how to utilize different simulations and things in a classroom setting and when you're online and how you can really help the children to learn. And that I think was really important, and it was very time relevant, and I think people made a lot of use of that. There were still professional development opportunities, and there were training programs that people did still go on. Even now we are implementing a few new courses for the IB diploma, and our teachers are currently taking virtual workshops. So usually people would go away for the weekend and attend a workshop and have face-to-face teaching. But because of the pandemic and because traveling was so restricted, the IB actually changed a lot of those workshops to face-to-face workshops, but a 3-day workshop rather than an online 2 or 3 week training where teachers had to log in every day or so. But in this way, it's like a face-to-face training for 3 days, but you're online instead. And so it's 3 days with a group of people you can collaborate with, you can ask questions, and it's live, and so it's relevant, and it's also something that works well, and teachers learn a lot from.
And you yourself are, a very career focused person, and you have started your masters. What's it like in terms of global leadership? What are you learning, and how do you see yourself progressing further?
I actually came across this master's because of the work that I was doing with the IB. Um, there are certificates of recognition from the IB for IB World School leaders, and there's also a focus on teaching and learning. And so I came across this master's program, which I found really interesting. It's distance learning at the University of Dundee, a master's of education with a focus on teaching and learning, and with the opportunity to have a certificate of leadership from the IB. And I think one of the main reasons that this was something that I really enjoyed was because of all of um, the research that has been done, the different methods that the IB was teaching us teachers to be utilizing, all of that collaboration. And I think that's key. Collaboration within the workplace is so important. And if you can give students kind of a multifaceted education of a topic, they are so likely to retain that knowledge. And I found that was something that I experienced in my own education when you had a topic and everything was around that topic, even the maths was around that topic. And that was something that really helped them to really delve deeper into that topic. And I think one thing that I found within the way that our curriculum is taught, that with the different curriculums in place, the Hessen curriculum and the Cambridge International, especially within primary, it was so important to make those links because, again, with the ESL learners, giving them the tools that they needed in Deutsch to really access that learning, to the best of their ability, but us providing the opportunity for that collaboration, I think was really, really important. And I think the global leadership and the kind of tools that you're learning within a master's program like the one I'm doing, I had the opportunity to also do a global leadership certificate in which I did a cultural intelligence course. And I think we take some things for granted, being brought up in the UK and being in such a multicultural environment and being able to do so much. I can definitely, for myself, I had an amazing education. The school I went to, I enjoyed thoroughly. We had so many amazing programs that the teachers did for us, um, that really shaped us to be what we are now. And I always look back on that, and I'm in touch with some of my teachers. And I often say to them that the experiences that we had when we grew up really made us so confident and able to do what we wanted to do. And there was never a case of, having any thoughts about not being able to achieve what I wanted to achieve. And I think that really came from the school and my family and my parents to give me that confidence that I could achieve what I wanted to achieve. And I always wanted to be a teacher. And so for me, that was my goal. And I think that in terms of what we try to aspire to being ourselves is to be lifelong learners. And that's something that we like to instill within our students, that learning doesn't stop. We're always continually improving ourselves and bettering ourselves. And through that, and through working with so many different cultures and nationalities, we're showing that we can be tolerant of each other's views, and we can be empathic of people because they've come from different situations. We've come across, there's books at the moment that are teaching children about how to be empathic towards people who've had to leave their homes and who are refugees. And all of this, I think, is something that, as us as teachers, really being confident and um, aspiring individuals ourselves, and continually learning and changing and improving, we can be inspirational to our students. And I think that's one of the main things that I see that happening. I have Muslim girls within the school that I work in, and they're always talking to me about why I wear the headscarf, and um, you know what it is, that what's the reason behind it, and do I like it, and when do I take it off, and things like that. And I always joke with the really little ones. I tell them I had a really bad hair day, and then they say, "Well, you wear it every day," and I said, "Yeah, every day is a bad hair day." So for the really young ones, of course, I don't delve into what the reasons are. But the older ones really, they really respect that. And I've seen the girls be really proud because their mums wear headscarves, and they can see me within their school wearing a headscarf, and that's lovely and empowering for those girls, and even for the boys. They see that there's all of the teachers that we have, they all try to be great role models for the students. And I think that's something that we do really encourage within the school community, is to be a role model and to bring things that we enjoy. And so we have students coming to us saying, "I'd like to run a computer club," or "I want to do a video editing club." And it's lovely to see that they want to help their colleagues and peers develop. And it's good. It's so lovely, and um, it's so fresh to see this, and to see that students want to make a difference. And this is that whole kind of philosophy, or the mindset of having a growth mindset, of also helping others to do well, and to not just always, it's not just about yourselves. And that's something that I really think, um, as a leader, and as the leaders that I've worked with, I'm really grateful for the opportunity that I have been given by the CEO of the school, her trust in me, giving me the role of vice principal to work in, and to work with the principal. I mean, they've all got these very amazing qualities as leaders, and I've learned a lot from them. And I think this opportunity that I've been given, I'm extremely grateful for, and I've really learned a lot, and I continually learn, and I love the work that I'm doing.
And it sounds absolutely fantastic because it obviously shows that the teamwork and the way that you're all working collaboratively is coming across by the way that you're speaking about the school as well. Um, was it hard to get into leadership as an ethnic minority female in international education? Because there are a lot of statistics out there that most of the senior leaders within international settings are white men. So, was it difficult for you to be able to move forward and progress? Because sometimes it is hard as an ethnic minority female to get up there. So, what were your experiences?
Again, I'm very grateful that I was given this opportunity. And I think I was, so I started working at the school, and I think it was just the work that I did, and the work that I did with the senior leadership team. And I was working, I mean, they're very lovely people to work with. So I think we got on well, and we had similar ideas. Um, and I think that's what it was really, that gave me that opportunity. I think they saw the work that I was doing, and the ideas that I was bringing, and I think it was a good fit at the time. It was what the school needed, and particularly with the change then towards the IB diploma program. It was actually my um, some of my work within my consultancy at the school was the application for the IB diploma. And then we were successful within that application, and then we progressed to the various stages, and all the way through. It was a long process, but the beginning, I think, was that kind of the trust and the collaboration with the senior leadership team, and the kind of the focus was for betterment. The focus was for making the school, um, achieve the results. And I think that was something that we had a common goal. And really, I think one of the main things that I've learned and I've really appreciated here is that it always comes down to the children. Anything happens, and the first thing the head will ask me is, and the child? Is a child okay? And it's like that's something that is the focal point of everything we do. Um, yes, you have the parents, you have the teachers, you have everyone else who makes the school run, but really focusing on the children and making sure that we have the environment that allows them to thrive. I think that's really important. And yes, I know it is difficult for ethnic minority, particularly females, to get into positions of leadership. But don't give up. If you want to achieve something, know that you can achieve it, believe it. And I think that's my advice, that it's something that comes after hard work, but definitely you have to not stop aspiring towards that.
And in terms of like, because you're working internationally, and we discussed something along these lines earlier on. I was, for me, Estonia has progressed more than any other European country right now, because in terms of IT and the stuff that they're developing, because we're both IT background,
Yeah.
um, they've progressed leaps and bounds, and it's not just recent. They've been doing it for years. Estonia is the number one place right now for IT in technology in education. um what's your what's your ambition for the future of education? Where do you see education moving towards?
I think during COVID and through the constraints that COVID brought with it, there has been a drive for education, for technology within education. And I think that's something that's been apparent all over the world. And again, back to those webinars and people putting their resources out there and telling each other what worked well on EduTwitter and on LinkedIn, and articles that you could read about what helps and what works well. And I think through all of this, you can see that there is a focus now on technology within education. And there's definitely been a drive for digitalization around us in the schools in Germany. And I think that's true of most places because of the need for integration of technology within the classroom. And I think the future of education for me is empowering our students. I feel that through the work that you do with your students, you need to provide them with the tools that they need to be better learners, um, and to find out how they can learn best and strive to achieve their goals. I mean, all these teachers who I follow so many teachers on Twitter and on LinkedIn, and there are so many opportunities to learn from one another and to encourage our students to do their best. And I think this is where our focus should be. When you're giving the students the tools that they need to learn the best they can, then you're making the new generation, they're going to be the ones bringing this change. And I think this shift towards to virtual learning that we've seen globally this year and the past year, this may be a taste of things to come, because the possibility of more viruses and variants of the viruses we have currently, there will be a greater need for virtual learning environments. And it's amazing to see how successful so many teachers were, and the ideas that they shared of what worked best whilst teaching from home. And even, teaching primary science, yes, there are certain things that you really can't, even when you're doing experiments for them online. Um, there's some things that they really don't grasp, and you have to revisit when you're back in the classroom. So there were things that I definitely thought they didn't quite understand this, and I revisited it just recently. Actually, last week I revisited something that I did online with my class, and I was so surprised they actually did understand it. So I think online they didn't show me the recognition that I needed to see, but then when we discussed it again as a class, they really did understand the concept, and they could give me examples of the use of the concept that I was explaining to them. So I think children have been amazing. The way that they learn and the way that they adapted to a virtual learning environment was amazing. And yes, it did. I got a bit monotonous towards the end, I think, because we were online for such a long period of time. Especially this year, we were closed from January to Easter, and that was, I think, a period where they really wanted to get back to school. And I think just this generation having been through this pandemic and learning online, they had such a drive for going back to school and just being in a classroom and having that interaction. It was so important for them to be back at school for social interactions and for just being together as a class. And
Mm.
you could see that when they came back, it took them a while to get back into it. But definitely, I think empowering our students is the way to go, and that should be the future of education, in my opinion. That we need to integrate technology more and find more resources and more techniques. But definitely, when the children know how they learn best and when they have tools to learn their best, then
Mm.
they will thrive.
And it's interesting because I mean, I mentioned Estonia before, and they, it has been reported widely that in 2001 it was one of the first countries to classify internet access as a human right, because obviously not everyone has access to the internet. There is a major digital divide, and Estonian schools have been using digital study materials and electronic school management systems for years. So they didn't have the same sort of problems that we had in this country, because they already had systems and structures in place. And I do agree with you. I do agree that we do need to look at empowering our students, and the future of education is moving forward. And in terms of things like cryptocurrency and all the other technological stuff that's coming in, I do think that innovation technology is important, and it's really sad to see that some schools don't take that seriously enough. Marby, where do you see yourself headed next? Is headship a route for you?
I actually really enjoy my role as vice principal. I think I'm very lucky to be in the team I'm in. The staff are amazing in the things that they do. They are my children's teachers also, and I think being a parent at the school, I have a different insight. And being part of senior leadership team, I think really helps us to come up with so many good strategies. And I really enjoy the work that I'm doing. But I see how much more responsibility it is for the principal. And so for the time being, while my children are still fairly young, and I don't know, I don't see myself at the moment working towards headship. I'm very happy where I am at the moment, and I'd like to get better doing what I'm doing at the moment, and to be and I want to get that master's done so that I have, you know, I can lead with knowing that I'm doing the right thing, and I'm using those roles within leadership that I'm being taught, the different the different types of leadership models, the transformational leadership and the collaborative leadership. There's so many lovely articles that I've been reading recently. There's the Belbin team roles and looking at how you can really help your team to to achieve their goal the best by giving certain people different tasks and responsibilities and looking at how people work together. So for me, I think at the moment this is good. I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and I'd like to really establish this as something that I've really worked hard in, and I want to learn more about this before I think about the next step.
Marby, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been absolutely awesome hearing from you. We need to catch up after this show as well.
Definitely.
We need to
Thank
keep
you.
in touch. Marby, if anyone wants to get in contact with you to discuss international education, or just to find out anything regarding Germany or whatever it may be, do you have a Twitter handle that they can get in contact with
Yeah,
you?
sure. I'm Marby K on Twitter. I'm a bit quiet on Twitter, but LinkedIn I prefer. So if you can contact me on LinkedIn, that would be much better. I'd like to thank you all for listening. I hope that I said something useful, and thank you, Sobia, for inviting me on today.
Brilliant. Thank you. Next up, we've got Megan back with the weekend news. And we've also will be coming back after this section.
Introducing Amanda Davey. Amanda is one of the first specialist teacher assessors for dyscalculia in the UK and offers dyscalculia tutoring and bespoke training for schools. With 26 years of teaching and tutoring experience in the UK, Amanda offers specialist online tuition focused on building confidence and developing skills. Amanda also offers online and face-to-face training on dyscalculia for educators, informing practitioners as to how to identify children that may have dyscalculia and how to support them in class. Find out more about Amanda and what she can offer you at www.amanda-davy-dyscalculia.co.uk. Creative Resources, made for teachers by teachers. At Creative Resources, we've been rethinking what a classroom can be. We've created a huge range of more than 2,500 original and exciting resources that span across more than 15 different subject areas. Whether you're looking for primary or secondary level resources, careers options, PSHE, arts, or humanities, Creative Resources have the resources for you. We offer full curriculum packages and unique, challenging escape rooms themed on topics such as Shakespeare, Tudors, and fractions. We have quizzes, task cards, Tarsia puzzles, and lots more. Better still, more than 100 resources can be accessed for free. Just visit our website www.cre8tiveresources.com. You can get 10% off any order you make on our website by using the discount code TT Radio. Creative Resources, made for teachers by teachers. This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News with Megan Goods.
This is your weekend Teachers Talk Radio News. A Norfolk head teacher has been forced to apologise this week after being accused of victim blaming following the release of the list of schools featured on the Everyone's Invited website for sexual assault victims. An ex-pupil of Reepham High School, the school of the head teacher, had written a letter telling of her and her peers' experiences of sexual assault or rape during the time they attended the school. In response, the head gave a statement, beginning with how it was horrible to hear that she had put herself in such a vulnerable position at parties time and time again. His comments sparked backlash, prompting the apology this week, with the head saying, "I accept my mistake in the specific language I used, and I am sorry for that." The Lost Learning think tank has published a report on the regional discrepancies in attainment across good and outstanding schools. The report revealed that a student living in the north of England was more than 5 times more likely to attend an underperforming school than a student in London. The research also discovered that the north was one of the best places to go to primary school, but the worst place in England to go to secondary. Even in the most deprived areas, students attending outstanding schools across the country were less likely to be on free school meals. A recommended solution from the think tank was that teachers working in an outstanding school who have reached M4 on the main pay scale should be eligible for an automatic bonus of £10,000 per year if they move to an inadequate or requiring improvement school for a minimum of 3 years. Finally, the report suggested that the government shouldn't be afraid to close stubbornly underperforming schools and replace them with a series of Phoenix free schools. That was your weekend news update from Teachers Talk Radio.
Thanks so much for that, Megan. Megan is a wonderful newsreader. I always love listening to her. So it was a bit of a blast from the past again this week because I have lots of people contacting me all the time sporadically, and I had another old friend contact me from when I was studying at the Institute of Education, and he was discussing ageism, and he was quite worried about it, and understandably so, because he's got to a certain age, and I won't reveal his age either. And that got me to thinking, is there ageism or age discrimination within our sector? What do you think? Text or call in with your views, or tweet at TT Radio 2021 or Sobia Stella S. How many older teachers still work? That's a question we need to think about, because with the amount of teacher shortages there are, shouldn't we be bringing back older teachers to the classroom? Are they even suitable to be back in the classroom, as the demands are very different? Am I being ageist myself now? And what does the word elderly mean? There was an article written by a blogger called Nancy Bailey, who says that elderly starts at 40. And I can't help but laugh, because this is actually hilarious, slightly ridiculous as well, that it starts at 40, because I'm coming up to that age as well, and I couldn't believe that she was using that term to describe me as a teacher. um so my question is, are leaders looking to replace older teachers so that they can simply hire younger ones? And what about performance management? Do you feel that older teachers are put under even more scrutiny to pressurize them to leave for much younger, cheaper teachers? We do have this issue of budgets, and is there a prejudice against older teachers? It could be the opposite way around. Is there a prejudice of younger teachers being promoted into certain roles because they're not experienced enough? I think older teachers are probably a lot more experienced, and therefore they're unable to be molded. And sometimes they can be often seen as troublemakers instead of being what the article describes as a rich asset. And being more expensive than a young, inexperienced teacher is also a bonus for their budgets. What are your thoughts? I think it's a shame. And I think it's quite disgraceful if this is to be the case, that older teachers are being pushed out. And I think it's because older teachers do bring a lot into the classroom, including life experience. And I'm thinking about my own experiences here. I actually, after university, I was working for the Treasury for a year before I came into teaching. And so I didn't come into it direct, but I was relatively new as a young person coming into the profession. And to be quite honest, I chose to come into the profession as well. So for me, if I'm heading up to the age of elderly, um does that mean I no longer have the experience, or I can no longer teach? I find it quite I find it quite patronizing, really, that younger teachers that are coming in are thinking like that, or younger leadership teams are thinking in that way, or even older leadership teams are thinking in that way. um I've had someone message in saying, I feel like it depends on the mentality of the person themselves and how they apply teachings and interactions to apply themselves with it. I think teaching is a profession where I came into thinking about making a difference to young people's lives. And I think we should be focusing on those who do choose to come into the profession to make a difference. And as you get older as a teacher, when I was a younger teacher, I was independent, I was on my own. My career was the sole focus. But as I've got older, I have got different priorities. They've got other responsibilities. And I think it's such a disservice to elderly teachers. Elderly, I've used that word. It is a disservice, because we're minimizing their experiences. And sometimes younger teachers who come into the profession, they don't have much life experience. Sometimes some people graduate and come straight into the profession not having seen anything else. So as a elderly teacher, their voices are often ignored, their experiences are often ignored, and many are leaving of their own accord because of the way they're being treated. I know that I've walked into schools, because I've worked across all of London, and I've worked into lots of different schools, some that I've been really good in and some that I've just kind of been okay in. Um, and I feel that my experience has been dismissed, even though I possibly have more experience than some of the teachers who've only ever worked in one school. And sometimes it's also dismissed by those who are in senior leadership roles and they're younger than me. So, why has teaching become a here today, gone tomorrow profession? Because it never used to be like that. I walked into a profession where there was stability and there wasn't all this upheaval. It's very similar to job hopping. And I'm now wondering, does all of this affect students' learning? So if we don't have stability and teachers are moving around, because that's how we want the profession to be, um, what about the impact on students' learning? With continuous staff changes and turnover, isn't learning disrupted? And what is an acceptable time frame um, to stay with the school if you were either a teacher, B, a middle leader, or C, a senior leader? And it got me thinking, because when I started, 5 years commitment to a school was important, and then it went down to 2. But I've recently seen CVs of senior leaders. So, for example, one person had 3 head of department roles in 3 different schools, and she'd only worked there a year each. Now, that sent alarm bells to me, because I thought to myself, well, how can you possibly show impact after a year? However, she still managed to move up into a senior leadership role. How can you show impact after a year or 2 only, especially if you come into the profession as a senior leader? And how do you even measure impact to show what you've done and you've made a difference to that school so that you have enough experience to move on? And what about the school taking on the staff member? How do they check that what has been said during an interview is indeed accurate? And aren't these some of the problems with our profession, that there is no consistency, so we're not able to progress, and we focus on short-term thinking rather than long-term strategic thinking of how to improve our profession? So I had some people send me their thoughts, and I've had quite a lot of people message me and tweet at me and send me messages on LinkedIn. So Rabia messaged in saying there's 2 aspects to consider. One, that she agrees that if you stay in one place, you develop better relationships with students, and students need consistency. You have the opportunity to develop culture and learn from within. However, if you are not progressing, then is it wiser to move? It also depends on the contracts and roles available. Whilst her preference is for a permanent role, staying in one place, she's ended up on maternity roles with a verbal offer for a permanent role on some occasions. And then she chose to turn them down due to lack of professional development opportunities and high staff turnover. And that ultimately comes down to culture, climate, and leadership, in terms of staff retention. I also had Phil Sharrock message me and said that 3 years and moving was a good benchmark. And somebody else called Eric mentioned that he thought Phil was correct. He said, year 1, you understand your role. Year 2, you show positive impact. Year 3, you show mastery. And year 4, you show new challenge and time to move on. And then I had an interesting conversation with someone called Zara. Zara said that it speaks volumes to her because she's developed a pretty varied portfolio career after spending time as a head of department, ASL, and over the past 3 years, she's done a variety of different roles in and out of education. And she feels that it definitely has catapulted her leadership skills in the best way possible. And now she feels she's in the role of her dreams. And she says that there is a place for both types of career development, and especially in the work culture we live in now. And she says part of her is thinking that we should recruit so much more diversely and widely if they encouraged movement, change, as well as long-term employment. So because she says that the world of work is changing and our students and their habits change, we need to think like that as well. We should need to think about um, working like startups who have an anytime holiday policy, because sometimes performance and return is better because it harnesses a culture of trust. So being able to leave and come back in is important for her. And she says measuring impact depends on the outcome and objectives and who the impact is for. And she says that leaders should be facilitating impact and affecting change rather than always needing to stay and be in it, if that makes sense. So yeah, it does make sense. She's basically saying that we should be also making the changes, then moving on and doing the same thing elsewhere to make improvement elsewhere as well. And she says that lots can be achieved within a year if we're thinking about advancements in technology and business. That's what's happening. However, education is a different system, and we need to think about culture change and brand identity. And we need to think about how we're going to progress and move forward for that. And I've had another caller message in saying in his mind, he feels some of the problems is that it's not viewed or treated as a profession, it's treated as a job, and that's completely overlooked in importance compared to pay. So I would agree with that. Sometimes we're not paid accordingly to the amount of numbers that we put in. And also, I've had another message coming on saying that there's a lot of politics in education rather than focusing on children and their development and learning. Now, coming back to age discrimination, other things that I was looking at were, are teachers too old to teach? What age does that happen at? What about teachers who are looking to come back in, like my friend who has plenty of experience but obviously is at a higher pay threshold, and obviously schools are eliminating him from interviews? So some other people have responded saying that job applications are not responded to, which I find is rude on another level, because if you are in industry, you normally get a letter of rejection, or you normally get some form of contact to let you know that whether you've been successful or not. And I think schools really need to improve on that. If you're spending over an hour on an application and someone's taken an interest in your school, it is important for you as a senior leader to make sure that you're responding to that. When we're talking about branding and schools, if you think about industry, communications is really important. And if you want to attract the best staff and retain the best staff, treating them with dignity is important. So the less experienced you are, the less you're paid and the easily you're molded. And often results are impacted on this as well because they don't have experience. However, older teachers are put under more scrutiny in order to force them out. And that's what the unions are saying. So according to NASUWT, the teachers union, teachers are being bullied out of schools because they're more expensive. And it's usually done by increasing lesson observations, putting them on support plans, and then often moving on to capability proceedings. My question is, why is it acceptable for people to suddenly tell teachers they're not good enough when they have over a decade's worth of experience? Some teachers are also being forced into early retirement, which can contribute to financial hardship as they get much older. So there's this form of overt and covert discrimination taking place in schools, and a large number of teachers who are very qualified are leaving the profession, and it's alarming and it's worrying. ACAS explains that age discrimination at work is treating someone unfairly because of their age. And under the Equality Act 2010, age is a protected characteristic. It's happening in various ways. So it's happening through recruitment practices. Number one, through the hiring process. So it's happening through job advertisements. It's happening through advertising, the way that job descriptions are written, the person specifications are written, through the interview process, and also sometimes through social media. Discrimination is also happening through training and promotion. Leaders are not supposed to have bias or stereotypical views and thinking towards age. It should not creep into decisions at all. You can't assume that training younger staff has more value than training older staff, nor must you discourage more experienced people from applying due to age. In terms of appraisals, they should be carried out without bias. So your performance and future goals should be consistently carried out appropriately. And in terms of capability, staff should be given a fair chance and should only be used if staff fail to improve, and dismissal for underperformance is acceptable only for those reasons, not because of age or being forced out. In terms of retirement, as a leader, you are supposed to know that it's up to employees to decide when they stop working. You are not allowed to assume that an employee is retiring. You are not allowed to suggest or force them into retirement either. So there's lots of things that are happening covertly and overtly that you need to be aware of. And the same happens the opposite way as well. For senior leaders to be thinking that a younger teacher can't perform at a certain role is bias, and it's something that leaders need to think about carefully. Another form of discrimination is perception. So for example, sometimes you might look younger than what you actually are. So for example, I look younger than what the age that I am. And if you look younger, but your employer sends somebody more mature looking to take part in outreach programs or conferences, then that's also a form of discrimination and bias. And if you feel that you're ever in these situations, you can find help and more information from acas.org.uk. And you can also consult your union to find out whether your employer is acting with integrity and following the Equality Act of 2010. So lots of information there, lots of things to think about. I'm going to leave you with that today. I do think that is a topic that I might revisit in the future. And it would be good to hear from other people. Tweet or message me. Let me know how you're feeling. Age discrimination works both ways, whether you're young, whether you're old. I think it's something that our profession does really need to think about seriously, because I don't think it's fair to be treating people in an appalling way, especially our veteran teachers. Yes, okay, sometimes veteran teachers are hard to change, but that doesn't mean they don't have experience and that they can't teach effectively. And they do have more knowledge than some people moving into senior leadership teams that are coming in now. So please don't dismiss their experience, and please do look after all our teachers within the profession, because everybody does bring something with them when they come into our profession. Okay, last comment. Treating teachers with that respect and respecting said dignity would possibly cause a rise in those entertaining the idea of seeking that profession. However, teaching is not a highly encouraged profession, which is why some older teachers are still in the job. Age discretion aside, they're not working on wages easily retired on. And I do think that is an issue. And I do think that it lacks integrity if people are working towards their pension and they have been working over 20 years, 30 years within the profession. For any senior leader to come and try and force them out is not acceptable, in my opinion. Okay. Thank you very much for taking part. Thank you to all my listeners and all my guests. That's it for today. We've got Khalil up next at 1 o'clock. We've also got a new host, which I'm looking forward to, Dr. Hareen Oterio. She's working in Rwanda, and it's all about technology in Rwanda and abroad. So I can't wait for that. It's been another brilliant show. I will see you all next week.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.